Hello again, and welcome to another round of streaming park reviews of RCT2. Today we are starting a multi-video series that looks at the New Element Flash Contest entries, which just concluded here recently. I'm going to go alphabetical by park. There's like 20-some parks that were put in for the contest. The challenge of the contest was that it was no custom scenery objects and no hacking of any kind, only vanilla base game methods and all of that sort of thing. So some definite challenges there, but a pretty interesting concept overall. It was a pretty short duration timeline to build a park that was 60 by 60, I think, and the theme of everyone's entry was connectivity. So some got that a little more than others, but either way, there's some pretty good parks here that we're going to go look at and dig through. So let's jump right on in. This is the first park. This is Art Expo 2020 by posix. So let's take a look around. So this is, as the name might imply, an art expo that has lots of pretty cool art installations, I guess, around the various pathways. What I like about this is the kind of clever use of some of the objects, like, for example, the bank building here that was used for this up front. So this is Person and Gravity from 1999. So what I like about this is all of them have a different tag, and they actually have names and everything and years. It's a nice little detail there. I like the little curved pieces used here. It feels very kind of World's Fair-esque almost, with this sort of structure for the monorail going through, and then some of the structures back here. Main headlining attraction here are these kind of opposing, dueling impulse coasters. No supports, unfortunately. Would have been pretty neat to see that, but I kind of like the back and forth here and how they just pop out at the individual times on either side. Black on black and white on white each time. So it's kind of messes with your head a little bit as you watch that go in. So this is Hedgehog's Dilemma here. Nice station up underneath, and our queue line heading down in there and then up on the other side. Back here we've got the Ultra Twister coaster, which I appreciate because nobody ever does these, although we're going to see a couple in this contest. But nice non-traditional layout, but since when are these terribly traditional? This is the protagonist. So we've got our two lift hills up, a couple of rolls here, and then another switch track on the way back, and kind of a mid-level, mid-height station here in the middle. What I like about this is all this kind of lattice covering on the front side here. Again, it feels to me very kind of World's Fair-esque, so I like that look overall and how the monorail shares the structure here with this this ride and everything else. Probably my favorite of the art exhibits has got to be the guy in the center here. That was the first thing my eye was drawn to, but I really like these waterfall elements with the geometric shapes. I think that's a good look overall, and just the whole thing is pretty minimalistic. I mean, there's not a whole lot of heavy development around, but I like that. It makes things easier to read throughout. I like that the stairs are kind of called out a little differently here with the queue lines and some of the various parts and pieces throughout. Just some of the little details, like these seating areas that are tucked off and away with the yellow awnings over top of them, and just the nicely nice utilized space here. But on the whole, I really do like this one. It's got a kind of refreshing change of density from a lot of parks where it's honestly just too dense. This one is a good look overall. Would have been nice to get some supports on those guys, but I can't fault it. So good work here, and let's move on to the next one. So the next one is the Carnevale delle Riomaggiore, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, so sorry, Kai. This is by Kai Bueno. And we've got a lot of stuff going on here. Sort of three parts to this. We sort of have our lower portion and an upper mountain, and then we'll call this sort of the lower mountain and the hillside. So first thing that you're struck by coming in here is just how bright it is. Lots of bright colors, lots of textures, lots of just kind of hitting you with from all sides with just color, texture, and there's interesting stuff going on. So it makes it a little more challenging to read in some parts and pieces. I think like the checkerboard underneath the water is kind of a cool touch, although with as chaotic as some of the other parts and pieces are here, it may become a little too much compared to just the more relaxed amount of just blank water here. But I do like the kind of in-your-face colors, the use of weird objects, the kind of gears everywhere that you don't really know quite why there's gears, but I like the movement there and just the various parts and pieces of scenery that you don't often see. Now, Kai and I did talk about this park kind of offline together, and we looked at various compositional things and things that could be improved from that sense as far as readability goes. When you look at like roof objects here, where you've got this roof in the blue with this roof in the brick, and this one with the plinth block, and then the awning here, but then awning in a different color here, and then the wood over here and the glass over here, just trying to bring it all together into a more readable sense of objects working together with other objects. But looking through the park, I mean, I like that there's a clear kind of thought process as to how this goes. There's a midway here with the water in different parts and pieces. I like that. I like this little cut through in the middle here. Kind of the landscaping that segments all of this apart. What's pretty clever here is this brewery tour, so Best of Atlanta, and if you look inside, you can see all the various Atlanta beers, which I appreciate. I think that's kind of fun. And then another nice touch here is next door is the brewery tour sobriety test, naturally a bumper cars ride, so I think that's kind of fun. The rest of these are connectivity themed names. So we have the Connectivity Carousel presented by Comcast, In the Public Eye by Facebook, and then we have all sorts of torrential music influx. There's the Always Watching by Google, which is very appropriate name-wise. So all sorts of connectivity based names there. Here's Sandemic, which I kind of like. Just a crazy wild mouse wrapping around the structure here and everything. I think this is a neat idea, neat concept. I like that overall. I like the use of the chicken here, and just kind of object usage that I would never do and I wouldn't even think about doing, but it kind of works here, and it's just kind of fun to see how other people use objects and how all that comes together. I think the biggest comment here, as I'd probably look at, is watching about floating things. Like we got this whole section of floating castle here, and then all these little lower crenellations here, where maybe this is a porch and then it just comes out and comes back in, versus kind of trying to float here and miss that a little bit. But I do like it overall. I don't quite understand why there's the blue in the sand, so hopefully you can explain that to me, because I'd like to learn some more, since I know from talking to you before, a lot of these things have a pretty good thought process behind it, so I like learning about where that comes from. Over here we've got a pretty interesting, I think this is social distancing, state of Georgia, which not doing so hot on that at the moment from current events. But it's an alpine coaster, which is kind of neat, because I don't think I've ever seen a vanilla alpine coaster in the game. We're using the bobsled cars, which is probably the closest, or bobster cars, I guess, the Schwarzkopf variety. This is probably one of the only times that I've ever seen this in the vanilla game, so I like the use. I think it's a neat, interesting ride. It does take up quite a lot of space, probably a quarter of the map there, but neat little layout, kind of wrapping around the mountain on the way down, some scenery in there with the mine scenery, this little tunnel, some nice kind of work overall there. And then we'll jump over onto this section, which is more of the cliffside buildings and rides and everything. So our two main signatures here are the Discord Plunge, which is appropriate, and Data Drop by Verizon, also funny and appropriate. So we have the coaster here first, this vertical drop coaster, which really kind of like this, up the mountain and then dropping off the mountain into this big tunnel here, and then the loop around the station, which I always appreciate some loop interaction going on there. Nice kind of flowy bit here for the second part. Wrapping around a couple of helixes, then we have a second smaller loop, and wrap up back into the brakes. From the water ride standpoint, it's pretty crazy that the water ride drop is nearly as big as the vertical drop coaster. So from an on-ride perspective, that'll be pretty wild, I would imagine. I like how it drops down here in between the couple of buildings and kind of nestles in there. And then this lower bit, actually one of my favorite parts here is this, the landscape with the grass or the hedge on either side of the splashdown, and then this floating kind of pathway over top, and then the glass used for the edging. To me, that comes together better than about anything else on this map, but I really enjoy the look of that overall. So very nicely done in that regard. And just lots of little details, lots of signs to read, and lots of kind of compositionally interesting things to look at, the way that this is all stacked up. I'd maybe try and get away from your 2x2 or your 1x2 next time. Kind of here you have green block, yellow block, although it kind of looks like one building, white block, green block, blue block, and all these kind of things. So I'd try and vary that up a little bit, some 2x3s and maybe something that's an L shape or things like that kind of stack up, but not necessarily in as much of an organized pattern there. I think that would help the composition even further with all that. But really interesting, and I appreciate the overall detail and everything on this. So nicely done, and let us move on. So next we are going to look at Celladoria by Avanine Commuter, which unfortunately was not eligible for the final voting because it came in late, but it's a beautiful entry. In my opinion, one of the nicer looking entries within the contest. So we are going to start over here at our entrance place. We've got the Virginia Reel and the monorail track architecture here. I like this sort of woven track architecture over top of this entrance. It's a nice look. I know it's been done a number of times, but it looks good, and it gives you the impression that it is hacked fully through there, and I like that look. Here we have a wooden coaster wrapping around this 3D cinema, using the signs here for some walls, and the Pizza Huts, or pizza stalls, I guess, for the roof. I mean, really just the typical no custom scenery tricks of the stalls for the roofs, and various parts and pieces. A lot of good textures here, so from the castle texture to the wood and the sticks here as well. The textures really help bring this all together, and the coloration of the Roman wall here with the lighter tan castle walls looks very nice. And then again, seeing the bank object being used to advantage here for that roof texture, which is great. Wrapping around to the other side, you've got the this is Exhibition. Got a Enterprise there. He eluded me for a moment. Nice little vignette here with the fountains up and around, looking over the coaster here. And then on the other side, you've got the Scrambler with great use of the little topiary pieces. I feel like these topiaries are underutilized. We have the basic shapes, but there's also like the squirrel and some of the other things that I almost never see people using. But I do like to see that done. Pretty cool terraced fields here, and then if you wrap around to the other side, you can see how the pathway wraps up and around to this space. You have our bobsled track subtly used there, and again, a nice little lookout area, same with up here, looking out across to the other side. Here we have just terraced fields with the hedges coming across. Really gives it that sort of linear look to it, and softens the overall elevation change, in my opinion. And then just the way that the paths utilize that in the linear direction there and don't cross it really help reinforce that overall scheme throughout. So we have our top spin up top here, and then here is the launched tower, which utilizes the volcano, which I actually didn't realize that was open through the middle. I've never messed with that one before, but that is a nice detail there, especially with the wooden coaster wrapping around it. It looks great. So over here we have Crafty, which is the another one of the Ultra Twister coasters. I like how the switch is hidden in this building on the backside here, so it all just looks very straight, very linear. We have 2 rolls on top and presumably 1 roll here on the bottom. And then again, the switch is hidden here, so you just get that lift hill, a little bit of this nice curved track texture up underneath also. Support blockers in use here well to hide everything and give it a more clean look, and not necessarily floating. I mean, it looks like it just bridges this gap here very nicely, but feels very open and a good look throughout. I like these cantilevered awnings also, and then the use of the tower for all the doors here kind of make this seem like an open air market or something that might just be closed. So let's cross the river, and we get to the other side here where we're changing our path type to the dirt, but we're keeping this scheme of the hedges coming across. First thing down here is the little cat car ride that, again, just weaves back and forth, keeping this very linear approach. I like that a lot. And the 2-level station here with the return on the bottom, so you can kind of see the vehicle pass as the guests are down here as it wraps around and comes up. Here we have Ballet, the wooden coaster, utilizing the terrain super well. It's massive when you look at the overall change in height. So let's stop and enjoy this wooden coaster. Not necessarily based on a full manufacturer, which I get, but you could easily assign this to somebody, I'm sure. But anyway, nice kind of swoopy drop right here, down into the huge drop here. So really a huge double down, wrap around that drop tower, and then back up the hill through that little covering, up way to the top. A nice kind of slow turn pause in the middle before we're going to dive back down and fall off the mountain again. And we'll wrap around once more, head up onto the mountain. Still some pretty decent pacing, surprisingly. Wrapping around that final helix and into the brakes. Also noting the little pre-lift section here, which I'm a pretty big fan of also. I like this wooden coaster. I like it a lot. I think it's just very picturesque. The orange sits nicely against the overall backdrop of the green and the grays and the sort of tans. So it's using the warm kind of chocolatey brown and then that orange. It just looks good. I like it a lot from a color standpoint. And then this little piece of architecture here, pretty kind of massive structure, but the way that it cuts through with the wooden coaster and then the various parts and pieces underneath, it feels less big overall, which is okay. And then we have some nice little station detailing here with the side friction coaster, open queue line. Again, I like that the windows are open so you can see the queue line throughout, using the mushrooms here for domes. And this sort of castle structure here for this big entry gate that's got, or exit gate, maybe, entry gate, that have the overhangs on either side. Let's wrap around and look over here to the final ride. This is Vihari, a arrow looping coaster, I guess, of sorts. This one's probably the most, I guess we could say, realistic of the layouts. But again, I really like this layout. Very nice detailing and use of diagonals. So we have our pretty cool lift hill that has some details on either side of it. And we'll again drop off the mountain, terrain used very well. Go through this loop that is has a backdrop of the waterfall. It's always nice to frame those elements. Gonna dive under this one, above this one, and into the batwing element here. dive down and around. I really like that S kind of up and over using the crossovers here. We're going to do the same thing here through a single corkscrew around the helix and into the diagonal breaks, and then back into the station itself. Really, I think how this layout works so well is all these crossovers. This underneath and then over top, and then underneath again, and then over top, and wrap around and then back underneath and back over top. So this is a really good example of what you consider a flowing layout in the game. So it just kind of rolls from one element to another, even though it has those kind of not necessarily awkward transitions, but sort of this like flat section here and then the couple of pieces here and here. It still looks smooth because you're alternating corners, you're going right, you're going left, you have the diagonal here, and it just flows from one element to the next very, very well. So this is a good coaster on the whole. Again, really nice detailed station, good use of the air-powered vertical coaster here for some track and texture roof, and really loving this garden of hedges and flowers and small trees and the little topiary pieces for a queue line. It just feels super pleasant. To me, this gets me nostalgic for the game because it's all base things, no hacking, but it's just beautiful. It feels very well put together with the landscape and just the overall composition of the entire park. So well done. This was definitely one of my favorite entries of the contest. So let's move along to Cliffs and Creek Amusement Park by Recurious. So this is a couple of different sections here. Come in right down here with the kind of black pathway. It's kind of a bold look overall. Doesn't necessarily offset with the black roof and the black wood here, but it definitely gives you that kind of darker vibe, I think. It's not super inviting, but looks all right in general. Let's get rid of the rain and enjoy our nice sunny day once again. Okay, right away in the entrance we have Reckoner, which is the top spin. Right on the map edge, I'd maybe try and slide that in a little bit, but that's all right. And then here's this sort of main street curving through. I like this from a just a procedural approach, I guess. You can kind of feel yourself walking through here, but you don't get to see the whole thing all at once. You kind of discover it as you walk through this little S-bend. Not lots of good variety of buildings, a lot of different textures, but on the whole they work together since they have similar schemes, like all the columns here with the porch on top and then the simple roofs. It gets a little 2x2-ish, but the way that they're offset from each other helps in that regard. Wrapping around, we have this pretty neat archery area here, which I like. That's a cool detail. And then we have the wooden coaster. Naturally, Excalibur is the name. So let's take a look. It's a pretty straightforward wooden coaster design. Kind of feels like something Summers and Din may have put together. Flat curve on that side, banked curve on this side. Generally, that works okay as long as the flat curve is sufficiently higher than the banked ones. But pretty good overall. The helix is a little bit odd, perhaps, but nice looking layout. Pretty standard fare, but smooth. I like the use of the low slopes here on the hills, just to smooth those out a little bit throughout. Pretty big castle here. Pretty symmetrical across the whole thing, but we're housing both the Skyliner and the castle itself in here, so kind of neat to see all of that. And let's take the Skyliner, and we're going to take that all the way up the mountain. So across the way here, there's a whole nother section, a lot of path here. Would have been nice to break that up just a little bit as far as putting some stalls or putting some little covered seating areas or something in there, but we have a nice little checkered plaza up here with the carousel in the middle. This is the Grand Carousel, and the appropriately named Grand Cafe right next door. Good architecture up top here. Probably my favorite building would be this guy here. So this has the Chips and Jimmy's, Jimmy's toilets, and so some various nice little detailing inside, but nicely put together overall. And then the seating area that overlooks down to the rides here. We have another Enterprise down here on this side. This is Stealth. As you come down the mountainside here, little bit of the peeps getting stuck, but unfortunately you can't do a whole lot about that. If you wanted to avoid it, you can put another staircase down here, but the fact that that the mountain is set up like this, I feel like that would kind of ruin it a little bit, so I can kind of accept the peeps being there. It's clear that this is part of a larger park as a whole, so this looks like it goes off to what they're calling Thrill Zone, off to this side. And then we have the big coasters, which I passed up earlier on here. It's a little bit odd to have the station and everything on this side and the queue over here. If you think of this from a real park perspective, I'm not going to find that queue entrance unless I'm over here somewhere or looking at my map. And then I'm going to go through, ride this thing, and then I'm going to pop over here, which is a good like half a mile from over here all the way back around, down through the entire park and back to the queue entrance. So like if I've got somebody waiting for me while I ride, then they're going to be out of luck. So for whatever reason, this one did not want to operate for me when I was doing this earlier. So let me look at this. So this is a 6-car train, and we're going to open that up again. And then this is a 6-car train. We're going to open that up again. All right. So let's have a look. So now it's loading up. This is an interesting dueling coaster. Challenger the ride in red and blue. And it's got a minimum waiting time, but we're going to pause this and get rid of that, just so we make sure it synchronizes. There we go. So one of these is a standard sit-down corkscrew coaster, and one of them is a Vekoma flying coaster. So interesting duality of the two. Very kind of an interesting choice. I like it. I think that's a cool design with the lattice supports up the lift hill and then a couple other spots. It's a little kind of random, maybe where those are. But let's take a look. So here we dive underneath of the first one as this one goes down the drop. And they're sort of kind of close to each other. And there's one kind of dual spot. A little bit slow in the corkscrew coming around. And then we're going to wrap through here. Hit through the corkscrew, sort of kind of close together. Wrap around while the corkscrew does the loop. The flyer will come right through a little bit late. I think on the whole, the duels didn't quite line up, and when you think about it from the perspective of somebody laying in the flying coaster train, you really have to work through the visuals of that. You figure here the corkscrew's done before the flyer even gets there, so you're not going to see a whole heck of a lot of that. But an interesting idea, especially threading that loop. The corkscrews are probably the best duel of all of them. But anyway, nice overall look. Some good use of the green flowers here for some water level foliage. And on the whole, good work with the trees, the plants. Gardens up here are the best. Like I said, this is my favorite building, although it's sort of kind of replicated down here, similar overall shape and look. These coasters took up a lot of space, but I prefer the wooden coaster of all of those. All right, let us move along, and we will look at the next one. So the next one is Connectiviy Castle by Hydroportal. So here we are, and this one is striking just because this is the first kind of full fantasy entry that we're going to take on. Down here we've got our food plaza, which have some pretty great names. So it's Not Delivery, Poppin' Popcorn, the Fun Funnel Cakes, Nuggets of Death, Edibles, of course, Smooth Souvenirs, Thirst Quenching Quenchers. Somebody's watched Avatar, I think, and a couple of info kiosks. So really we're looking at a big square in a big castle with a giant mountain of stuff. So let's take a look at all of this. So really, when we strip away the scenery, we've got just a big, giant layer cake worth of ice and rock, with the mints and the gumdrops here used as sort of cloud elements, with all sorts of just fun stuff thrown in there, like this Colosseum piece of scenery and some of these other various bits and pieces. There's some plants up here, inexplicably, but it's just fun. There's a lot of interesting stuff. So there's Super Launch, our tower here. Here, you should ride the elevator, which is correct because I'm not about to take those stairs. It's a long way up. Halfway up, we've got the flying racers, which cut in and out. And I kind of like how they just poke out of the ice and dive back in, and you get a little bit of a peek at it, and that's about it. Here we have the Sky Looper 9000. Clearly it is over 9,000, as we're going to back up, which is interesting using the reverse incline shuttle mode, and almost a duel there with the vertical drop coaster. Come back and back into the station. So another interesting take on a shuttle coaster. Let's take a look at this vertical drop coaster. So this is Heaven's Gate, which has the reverse layout from a lot, where the station is up on top. So you hope the ride is going to be worth the trek since you're going all the way to the top. And we have our 4-peaked castle here, and everybody's just going to load onto here, and let's take a look. So we're going to keep this up in case we lose it. Here on the drop, getting ready to dive down and twist into the dive. Coming back up and through the structure, around some curves here, and up and around, sort of a figure 8 almost. Actually, a kind of a nice sort of flowing layout. Sorry for jumping around. I'm going to jump once more. Before it hits the brakes, wraps around through this loop. Not too forced looking through the loop. A lot of times when I see a loop threaded, I look to see how forced it looks, because a lot of times that takes some effort, but it doesn't look awful here. And this kind of works overall for everything. And then a steep lift back. I think I like how the curve of the layout here is held up by the scenery pieces throughout. But I like this layout. It actually kind of has a nice little flow to it, from element to element as it sort of floats there around the mountain itself. Back down here on the ground, we have, I think it's a flyer. It is a flyer. This is Falcon Super Scorer. Sort of a U-shaped layout, I guess. And a little more traditional than the other one, which actually I'm kind of a little disappointed at, for as kind of fantastical and wild as this is. This guy is kind of doing its standard deal here on the bottom. So a roll through there, a wrap up and around, a few corners, and a couple of hills in there. It doesn't feel like a flying coaster. It feels like it could be an inverted coaster with all the corners. Not quite so much as far as inversions go, and then the airtime hill here is not really a flying coaster thing. It's in a realistic shape enough that I kind of judge it realistically, more than, say, this guy up here that's floating around a gumdrop mountain, versus this guy who has a cleared station, brakes, lift hill, and various coaster-like elements. So I would say, on the whole, the vertical drop is far more successful overall than this guy, for example. But I like that he's there. It just would have been maybe kind of neat to see something different wrapping around along the bottom here. A couple final little details here as we look around. Here's the Maze of Death, which sounds unfortunate, and Wild Waves, the swinging ship, and then this sky wheel perched way up top, and all sorts of nice rides and things kind of hidden about. There's definitely a lot to discover as you pull apart this piece, or this tower, I guess, and it has to imagine how long this must have taken to stack all of these. That's some commitment there. So well done on the whole, and let us move along. Next up, we have Corn Activity by MK98, which is pretty much what it says. It's corn and radioactive. So yeah, there's corn, and there's radioactive. That's pretty much it. So I can't say I quite understand, but you know, corn. Next, let's move along to Disconnectiviy by barnNID. I liked this one a lot. This one was fun. It just had a lot of kind of stupid stuff to it that made me laugh. Um, so we'll just jump right on into the middle here with the worst layout ever, which I would beg to differ from some of the other layouts that I have seen, but this is sort of a whole park of kind of horrific looking amalgamation of design. Just barely making that over there, a couple miles an hour as it goes around. The vertical drop into this, and honestly, it isn't the worst layout that I've seen, but it's not great, which is on purpose. So I guess that means it's successful. All this kind of tied together with the bright green water throughout, using one of the original custom palettes that the game included. So a lot of use of just the weird scenery stuff. So we have our Sphinx here. We've got the Saturn V rocket over here by the connection of Disconnection, our monorail. Over on this side, here's the log flume and the dinghy slide coming down right next to the Splashin' Splooshin', the water ride here that wraps down through some of these buildings and then back up and into the side here. It's funny using the pieces here colored in that lime green water texture. They stand out and kind of look like they're glowing almost. To use of the Goliath sign in a pretty substantial manner. Up here we have mountain riding roller cart, which seems like a very Japanese type coaster name. I think I picked it up in the middle here, but let's take a look. Wrapping around that little mountain of footballs and carrots there in the middle, and now over by this futuristic thing. So it's all right, and here we go, and then a quick little launch back up into the station. So I didn't pick it right up in the beginning. Awkward layout. I'd say this layout is far worse than this one, but just fun in general. I like the fact that there's like all these different kind of biomes in here. This is sort of our city looking Chinese-ish one, and there's a snow thing up here with a floating pirate ship, and it's all over the place. So Disconnectiviy certainly fits the overall theme. Here's our actual entrance up here with various parts and pieces. I would have liked to have seen some of the stalls with some names on there just to further confuse and surprise. But I mean, on the whole, it's fun. It's a interesting one. Here's Carts of the Go, as they are, and just lots of just weird kind of acid trippy drug type scenery that doesn't quite make any sense, but is fun to poke around. All right, I think that's about it for this guy. So we will do one or two more. Let's see how long the next one takes. So this is Disney's Seven Seas Lagoon by Matt K48. Back to realism a little bit. So this is sort of a condensed version of Disney's Seven Seas Lagoon at Disney World in Florida with the three hotels. We've got the Contemporary, the Polynesian, and the Grand Floridian. Unfortunately, I don't have the music on, so you can't hear it. But if you open the park yourself, each one of these has a motion simulator here playing the music of each one. So modern for Contemporary, you got the Island for Polynesian, and then the more classy for the Grand Floridian. On the whole, good structures. This is probably my favorite of them from the Contemporary. You can definitely tell what each one is meant to be. Definitely not like a faithful recreation, but an inspired by it for sure. We have the pools at each one, and then the monorails here with the resort loop and the express loop. Only comment I would have there is the express loop runs counterclockwise to how you have it versus the resort loop, which runs clockwise. So not a whole heck of a lot to look at, unfortunately. It would have been kind of neat to see some other clickable stuff, even just hidden staff and things like that to give it a little bit more look. But a kind of unique take on this, and I get the connectivity as in the lake coming around with the monorail and the 3 different resorts all brought together by the lake on the whole. So good look, nice design, but would have liked to have seen some more things to click on and some more stuff to look at. Alrighty. So now we're going to look at Down the River Ganges. This is by Bubsy41. This is another really solid entry, really well done thing. So this will be my last one for this session, but let's dive on into our entrance here. Again, we're using the woven Virginia reel track, and we come right into merry-go-round 1, which would have been nice to have named that, but it might have run out of time here at the end. I like these little trellis pieces using the air-powered vertical coaster. On this side, we have Goda Dash. Pretty cool station here, using the land blocks and some pathway, and then just some other fence detailing and everything. So nice, nice design for it. And using the single rail coaster, which you don't see terribly often. I appreciate the folks here who have been using different rides than you usually see. So you can't do a whole lot with this ride, which is why this layout actually works pretty darn well. We've got a couple of hops down off the mountain, some pretty wide corners here, jumping through this pretty cool looking building, wrap around underneath the ground, pop back out for this last little bit, hop over the pathway, and then back into the brakes and the station. So neat look. I like the overall design for it, and the use of a rare coaster type also gets some points from me. Top spin as well with the rapids pieces up underneath showing some water. I like that look. Very traditional top spin look to it, and kind of wrapping this with scenery feels sort of like Tolakan at Fantasialand or any of the other more highly themed top spins out there. But good look. RCT makes these rides way too small compared to the real thing, but fitting in this overall scale, I think was done well. Jump back over here to the other side. So this is Udon and a Vekoma and Vertigo. A little bit odd in that it is a mirror image Vekoma and Vertigo. Usually these are on the opposite side, stationed on the opposite side, but standard layout deal here. What I really like is the supports. So pretty cool use of the looping supports, the observation tower, and some scenery to do a very nice job with semi-realistic looking supports on that whole thing. So here we're wrapping around using a different train, also using the vertical shuttle cars, which is a little bit of an odd choice, but again, a coaster type you don't see very often, so points for that. Here in the middle we have Nati Devada. This is the wooden coaster, and probably my favorite layout, although Intimate I like too. So impressive station here, a lot going on, a little hard to read maybe, but land blocks, pathway, and scenery all comes together for that. So let's take a look at this coaster here. Come off the lift hill, again using terrain really well. Some of the best entries so far have used terrain very well. Going to drop off that all the way down to the water. Nice big drop. Up, and again, kind of like the Avanine's Park, we're going to wrap the launch tower there, go up through the drop, around, across the water again, come back across, and then we're going to finish with a water splash. Again, an element you almost never see used, so good use of that. I love this little bit here where we're going to curve up and back through underneath of that drop. That's a good look. It frames it really well, and it flows super nicely throughout. Some cool detailing here with this sort of broken bridge-esque theming, and then the mine train coaster sticking out. Good use of the hypercoaster track here for some support up over top. And now we'll go ahead and get ready to cross the bridge, cross the river. It's been a couple of entries so far where they have the center river and then 2 parts on either side, and we're going to see quite a few more of that throughout. Would have been nice to name some of these pieces of track texture just to give it a little more flavor, I suppose, but I like using the mini golf for the docks throughout. A little bit more of similar architecture, a little bit darker, sort of gritty, using the block of flats building scenery, some of the mine scenery, and then a lot of just the darker wood looks overall. Up here we have this temple type structure, which kind of sets apart from everything else, which I kind of like, because if you zoom out, this is what catches your eye, among other things. I like the use of the little village hut as the topper for the drop tower. I think that's a nice touch. Another enterprise, and then up here on the hill we've got the Jalsrot. Again, I'm probably pronouncing every single one of these wrong, so my apologies. But cool layout with the 2 side-by-side drops that start right off the bat with the one, it looks like. So we come out of the station here, drop down, come up, and then we have a big drop, and then we're going to go up again and do a second big drop. So pretty long ride, but one that's full of pretty cool elements here. Liking the waterfall over top here in the bridge across, and then just the way that this water ride is set within the rest of the buildings, kind of like Kai's water drop ride was. A huge station again, not too much as far as the readability of the architecture across a whole structure here. So lots of little bits and pieces, but I'm not sure which parts are supposed to be a structure or if it's all meant to be one. I do like the use of the rusted metal as a roof cover and queue cover in a couple of these spots, offset by the pathways here, which give it that gray texture overall. So a little bit dark, a little bit gloomy. A cool pathway here that's raised up over the mountainside as you walk around. I like the texture that the dirt path gives when you're up over the ground, so that sort of sticks that you can see through a little bit. It gives it that sort of jungle-ish type adventure feel. So this is a neat path that wraps around. This is one of my favorite little moments in this park, especially as the wooden coaster kind of screams up overhead and then is high enough that you're up above the tree line here for the landscape below. Alrighty, so let's get over to the last ride here. So this is Genevar. This is an Intamin coaster, I guess, not necessarily a hyper coaster, but we have our cable lift. I just stopped by the blocks, which is unfortunate, but here we're going to dive off and over an airtime hill with a floater on that. Have a cool turnaround here with the steep drop, back up underneath, wrap around to helix, which frames this drop, dive underneath the pathway diagonally, which is nice, very well done. Over here, up above the theming below, and then back inside into the brakes. So good layout overall. There's some bits that could have potentially flowed a little bit better, like some of the stuff in here. But what I really like about this is the diagonal drop underneath the pathway here. And it's hidden pretty well so that it doesn't look awkward without hacking or custom scenery or things like that. But the way that the path goes over top of it, you kind of feel like there's a chasm here that this guy just drops up underneath and looks up on the other side. And this would be a neat place to stand and watch this coaster kind of come at you and then pop up the other side. Good interaction here with the wooden coaster over and under. Again, wrapping around, crossing again over the path, and then just a lot of nice interaction with the path and the landscape around it. And then I like how this brake run sort of hangs over the edge of the water. So that's a cool look across. So I don't know if this kind of signifies that the park is meant to continue, so it'll be neat to see how the rest of this park would look. Good waterfall here at the corner, dropping down to using the rapids track. Little surprised that the waterfall pieces weren't being used, but I guess you can't really put that in with the rapids track in there from a clearance standpoint. So this is sort of RCT1 LL trick, but it looks good. I mean, from what you zoom out, certainly can't see the waterfalls in there anyway, and you certainly know what it is, so there's no fooling you there. And then this little drop off into the river itself, I'm a huge fan of. I think that looks really nice. So that is all for this park, and some great work on this one. We're going to cut the stream now, and I will upload this as part 1, and then I will be back with part 2, and probably part 3, and maybe a 4th, until I get through all of these entries, and we can review them all. So well done to everyone I've looked at so far, and look forward to seeing the rest. If you would like your park reviewed, feel free to send me a note at nedesigns.com on New Element. I am Cedar Point 6 there. Feel free also to leave a comment on the YouTube video, and I will get to your park as soon as I'm able. So again, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to coming back for you with the next round of Flash contest entries. So until next time, thanks very much for watching.